Thank you for what you've done for the game, for showing the average guy that if you work hard at anything, you can get to the top and shine bright like a diamond. So thank you, Dustin Poirier.
They say diamonds are forever, and sure the one is from Lafayette, Louisiana. Give it up for the diamond of Lafayette, Dustin Poirier.
That was the last time we ever saw Dustin Poirier compete inside the octagon. Let that sink in. No more walkouts to James Brown, no more blood-stained gloves raised high, no more post-fight speeches with that mix of grit, humility, and heart.
Who ain't got jiu-jitsu?
That's all a part of history now. That final bout wasn't just the end of a fight, it was the final chapter to one of the most brutally honest careers this sport has ever seen. From his beginnings as a scrappy brawler to becoming one of the most well-rounded and dangerous contenders in the world. He showed us what transformation under pressure really looks like. And in the main event of UFC 318, that journey came full circle. The cage door closed behind him one final time, and standing across from him was Max Holloway, the very fighter who had once made his UFC debut against Poirier. That night, years later, Dustin passed the torch in the most Dustin Poirier way possible, by throwing himself into the fire one last time. He didn't leave with a belt, but with something far more lasting. Respect etched in blood, applause that lingered long after the lights dimmed, and the legacy that won't ever fade.
Yeah, I'm going to grow from this, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to win. No doubt about it. Either I'm going to win or I'm going to die in the cage. One of the two is going to happen.
Thank you to the Fighting Business. Absolutely amazing. One of my favorite new channels going right now.
In 2015, Dustin Poirier finally had enough of the self-mutilating weight cut to 145 and decided to move up. At that time, he held an 8-3 record at featherweight. Decent, maybe, even good, but his ceiling was already decided. Decent striker, eternal gatekeeper, Conor McGregor's victim, just another fighter. Typical stuff for anyone not the literal GOAT of the sport, but looking back, there was some truth in there. His overall record was 16-4, which is good for a young prospect, but in his last 7, he was 4-3. As soon as he got to step up in competition, he started picking up losses, but most importantly, his last fight at featherweight was a nightmare from start to finish. He was outsmarted, outplayed, and outgunned by Conor McGregor throughout the saga. It was the kind of loss you carry for the rest of your career.
You believed your hometown was not good enough. You believed Lafayette is not good enough, so we must move stick. I said, that is why you don't have a flag, because you don't have a belief in your surroundings. That is the mind of a journeyman. That is not the mind of a champion.
To defy all those who were talking shit and concluding his career for him, Dustin had to go on a hell of a run at 155. You could tell there was something different about Dustin at 155. Maybe those 10 extra pounds were life and death. Maybe he was hitting his peak, or maybe y'all talk too much shit. His punches were much crisper, his chin was suddenly granite, and every time he stepped into the octagon, Diamond looked possessed, not just to win, but to make a statement. It was bonus after bonus, violence after violence, one world champion after the next.
Just look at my track record. Eddie Alvarez, former champ. Anthony Pettis, former champ. Justin Gaethje, former champ. Eddie Alvarez, former champ. That's 4 champions in a row. What else do I got to do? This is like my 23rd fight in the UFC. Come on, man.
In 2019, Dustin Poirier finally touched gold, not the undisputed belt, the interim, but he won this against Max Holloway, the featherweight champion who was on a massive win streak. It was the interim title, but that win at UFC 236 turned even the most staunch critic into a believer. Dustin Poirier was no gatekeeper. This guy was a championship-level talent, and he had his sights set on undisputed greatness.
Tell your boy to get his together.
2 Nigerian-born champions on the same night and 2 from Louisiana. That's pretty cool.
Turns out, Dustin Poirier wasn't born in the wrong era of a super dominant champion. He was born during the dynasty of the most destructive grapplers in lightweight history. He faced Khabib and got run over. Tough loss because it wasn't close. He fought his way back up and faced Charles Oliveira, and while he did better, the result was the same, loss by submission. But even with multiple failed attempts at becoming undisputed champion, it was never truly over for Dustin. His highlight reel grew bloodier, and his resume read like a hit list of former UFC champions. The most illustrious names on that resume was Conor McGregor. After 7 years, Poirier got his chance at redemption against the guy who sent him out of 145. And he didn't just beat McGregor, he sent him out of the sport, probably for good. Then in 2024, it became clear that Dustin Poirier's time in the sport was coming to an end after the third championship loss to Islam Makhachev, another elite grappler in a long line of lightweight monsters who had stood between him and the undisputed belt. Dustin recognized the signs. He had nothing left to prove, nothing left to chase, except one final moment on his own terms. His request was simple. He wanted to fight one last time in his home state of Louisiana, in front of the people who had supported him since the beginning, and he wanted to share the cage with a legend.
The UFC is coming back to New Orleans on July 19th. It's going to be my final fight. I'm going to lay the gloves down in Louisiana where it all started for me. Me and Max Holloway are going to fight 5 rounds, main event, pay-per-view for his current BMF title. And I was his first fight in the UFC back in 2012. And he's going to be my last fight in the UFC, so we're going to put on another war.
The UFC, to their credit, granted both wishes. UFC 318 was set in Louisiana, and his opponent was none other than Max Holloway, the very same fighter who had made his UFC debut against Poirier over a decade earlier. Throughout fight week, the tone was different. It wasn't about promotion or trash talk. It was about honoring a man who had given everything to the sport. For once, the UFC paused the hype machine and let the moment breathe and take over. They celebrated Dustin Poirier, not just as a former interim champion or fight night bonus machine, but as a fighter who had come to personify the soul of the lightweight division.
To start, DP, knowing this is your last fight is bittersweet. You simply trained hard, showed up, and fought with all your heart. And they gave us some of the greatest fights in our sport's history. Dude, I don't know, I'm about to get emotional. Your storied career couldn't have happened to a more deserving person.
You don't have to keep reading that moment out loud if you don't want to.
Yeah, I want to keep these.
This was more than just a retirement. It felt like saying goodbye to a piece of the sport itself. When the night finally arrived, it delivered in a way only fights like this can. Poirier versus Holloway was a war in every sense of the word, gritty, relentless, and violent in the way that defines greatness. It will be remembered as one of the best fights of the year, and in the end, Max Holloway walked away with the win. He retained the BMF title and finally won a trilogy, saving his own career from rot. But if you were watching closely, you understood that this fight wasn't about who won on the scorecards. It was about what Dustin Poirier gave us one final time.
But he became so valuable that the UFC brought a fight back to New Orleans for the first time in 10 years to let him retire. He's a winner, man, and a fighter, and that's what I'm gonna remember.
The guy could have coasted, played it safe, tried to squeak out a decision in front of his own crowd who would have cheered him anyway, but he went to war. He got busted up, bloodied, and dropped, but that had never stopped him before, and it didn't in his last rodeo. That final walk to the cage and those final exchanges under the lights, he reminded everyone watching why he was revered and why even without the undisputed title to his name, Dustin Poirier is considered one of the all-time greats at 155. Most importantly, he got to leave the game on his own terms, in his own state, doing what he loved. He walked away not just as a fighter, but as a man at peace with what he gave to the sport and what he got back. Paid in full. When the Hall of Fame call comes, and trust me it will, no one will question it. He may not have ever worn the undisputed gold, but Dustin Poirier gave us something rarer, an honest, raw, and unbreakable journey through steel, fire, and blood, a career remembered, not just for what it achieved, but for how it was forged, cut, and polished under pressure, a diamond in every sense. Heading into UFC 318, all we wanted was a happy ending for both of them, and somehow, we got it. Max Holloway retained his BMF title and kept his career alive with vintage violence, but the spotlight that night belonged to Dustin Poirier. No awkward press conference, no random tweet at midnight, no mystery injury that robbed us of a proper goodbye. This wasn't like John Jones, who slipped quietly out of the sport and retired on Twitter with the help of ChatGPT. This was different. This was earned and deserved. Dustin got to ride off into the sunset the way legends are supposed to. His retirement was glittered in gold in memory, and he didn't need a belt to validate it because he carried something more enduring, the respect of the fans and the admiration of his peers. He may not have been the undisputed champion, but in every way that truly matters, Dustin Poirier got the ending of a king, a man who respected the game, and in the end, the game, the company, and the world gave it all back. He wasn't just another fighter, he was a pillar of the division, a standard, a story. He was Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And next time a lightweight contender fight is announced, trust me, you'll feel the absence, and it'll definitely hurt.